Today's article is Lesson of a Lifetime by Stephen G. Bloom. First, we're going to start by looking at some vocabulary. Our first term is still matters, which means still important, and set apart, which means to separate. To buy her pitch means to believe her. To wreck means to destroy. Chasm is a big divide. And to rattle off is to read off quickly. Inevitable is something that you can't stop from happening, and remarking is to make a statement about something. Beaming means happy and proud. To gang up on her is when a group of people bully someone. Apologize is to say you're sorry. Nasty is not nice or ugly behavior. To ostracize is to exclude intentionally, and to inflict is to cause pain. Now I'm going to read through the article for you. Lesson of a Lifetime, Part 1 of 3, by Stephen G. Bloom. On the morning of April 5th, 1968, a Friday, Stephen Armstrong stepped into Jane Elliott's third grade classroom in Riceville, Iowa. "Hey, Mrs. Elliott," Stephen called as he slung his books on his desk. "They shot that king yesterday. Why'd they shoot that king?" All 28 children found their desks, and Elliott said she had something special for them to do, to begin to understand the assassination of Martin Luther King, Jr. the day before. "How do you think it would feel to be a Negro boy or girl?" she asked the children, who were white. "It would be hard to know, wouldn't it, unless we actually experienced discrimination ourselves. Would you like to find out?" A chorus of yeahs went up, and so began one of the most astonishing exercises ever conducted in an American classroom. Now, almost 4 decades later, Elliott's experiment still matters to the grown children with whom she experimented, to the people of Riceville, population 840, who all but ran her out of town, and to thousands of people around the world who have also participated in an exercise based on the experiment. She prefers the term exercise. It is sometimes cited as a landmark of social science. The textbook publisher McGraw-Hill has listed her on a timeline of key educators, along with Confucius, Plato, Aristotle, Horace Mann, Booker T. Washington, Maria Montessori, and 23 others. Yet what Eliot continues to stir controversy. One scholar asserts that it is Orwellian and teaches whites self-contempt. A columnist at a Denver newspaper called it evil. That spring morning, 37 years ago, the blue-eyed children were set apart from the children with brown or green eyes. Eliot pulled out green construction paper armbands and asked each of the blue-eyed kids to wear one. The brown-eyed people are the better people in this room. Eliot began. They are cleaner and they are smarter. She knew that the children weren't going to buy her pitch unless she came up with a reason, and the more scientific to these space-age children of the 1960s, the better. Eye color, hair color, and skin color are caused by a chemical, Eliot went on, writing melanin on the blackboard. Melanin, she said, is what causes intelligence. The more melanin, the darker the person's eyes, and the smarter the person. Brown-eyed people have more of that chemical in their eyes, so brown-eyed people are better than those with blue eyes, Eliot said. Blue-eyed people sit around doing nothing. You give them something nice, and they just wreck it. She could feel a chasm forming between the two groups of students. Do blue-eyed people remember what they've been taught? Eliot asked. No, the brown-eyed kids said. Eliot rattled off the rules for the day, saying blue-eyed kids had to use paper cups if they drank from the water fountain. Why? One girl asked. Because we might catch something, a brown-eyed boy said. Everyone looked at Mrs. Elliott. She nodded. As the morning wore on, brown-eyed kids berated their blue-eyed classmates. Well, what do you expect from him, Mrs. Elliott? A brown-eyed student said as a blue-eyed student got an arithmetic problem wrong. He's a bluey. Then the inevitable. Hey, Mrs. Elliott, how come you're the teacher if you've got blue eyes? A brown-eyed boy asked. Before she could answer, another boy piped up. If she didn't have blue eyes, she'd be the principal or the superintendent. At lunchtime, Elliot hurried to the teacher's lounge. She described to her colleagues what she'd done, remarking how several of her slower kids with brown eyes had transformed themselves into confident leaders of the class. Withdrawn, brown-eyed kids were suddenly outgoing, some beaming, with the widest smile she had ever seen on them. She asked the other teachers what they were doing to bring news of the King assassination into their classroom. The answer, in a word, was nothing. Back in the classroom, Elliot's experiment had taken on a life of its own. A smart blue-eyed girl who had never had problems with multiplication tables started making mistakes. She slumped. At recess, 3 brown-eyed girls ganged up on her. "You better apologize to us for getting in our way because we're better than you are," one of the brownies said. The blue-eyed girl apologized. On Monday, Elliot reversed the exercise, and the brown-eyed kids were told how shifty, dumb, and lazy they were. Later, it would occur to Elliot that the blueies were much less nasty than the brown-eyed kids had been, perhaps because the blue-eyed kids had felt the sting of being ostracized and didn't want to inflict it on their former tormentors. When the exercise ended, some of the kids hugged. Some cried. Elliot reminded them that the reason for the lesson was the King assassination, and she asked them to write down what they had learned. Typical of their responses was that of Debbie Hughes, who reported that the people in Mrs. Elliot's room who had brown eyes got to discriminate against the people who had blue eyes. "I have brown eyes. I felt like hitting them if I wanted to. I got to have 5 minutes extra recess. The next day, when the tables were turned, I felt like quitting school. I felt mad. That's what it feels like when you're discriminated against."